Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This study provides an objective, verifiable, and comprehensive analysis of the Quran's 29 mysterious letter combinations across 3 consecutive and interrelated chapters. The Quran contains 29 cryptic codes known as Muqatta'at. These mysterious letter combinations consist of 1 to 5 letters, are organized in 14 patterns, and use only 14 of the 28 Arabic letters. And the first one of them is in the beginning of chapter 2, and the last one is in the beginning of chapter 68. Of the 114 chapters of the Quran, 29 commence with one of the 29 codes, and there are 38 codeless chapters between the coded chapters. So there are 29 coded chapters, and between these coded chapters there are 38 codeless chapters. The number of codeless chapters are more than the number of coded chapters. The total is 67 chapters, from chapter 2 through chapter 68. In this chapter, we demonstrate how elegantly and intricately the 29 chapters with the codes and the 38 chapters without them in unity form a fascinating interconnected mathematical framework. Within the codes, there are 3 primary letter combinations: 5 of the A type, 6 of the B type, and 7 of the C types, which conclude in the consecutive order of 5, 6, and 7. This event does not appear to be by chance, because here we have 5 Alif Lam Ra's, 6 Alif Lam Mims, and 7 Ha Mims. They are consecutive order. And surprisingly, the 5 is completed here first. And then the 6 Alif Lam Mims are completed after the 5. And the 7 Ha Mims are completed after the 6. This configuration is by design, and this is why. The 3 main patterns or codes subdivide the 29 codes into 4 distinct groups in perfect ascending order. These are 3, we have 9, 9, 9, 2. These are the 4 groups. And these are fundamental groups because everything else is built on these 4. Now this is an order and a structure that does not appear to be random either. And this is why we have the 5 Alem rows, and they were completed here, but here we see the code that is here is the 9th code. Then we see that the 6 Alef Lam Mims are completed here. And when we check, we see that this Alef Lam Mim is the 18th code. And when we come to Ham Mim, the 7 Ham Mims, we notice that the code that's here is the 27th code. So we have 9th code, 18th code, and the 27th code in a consecutive order. And then we have these 2 codes that are very different from these, and they have their own group. So these 3 have a special order, very similar to each other, but the last 2 codes are very different. Numerical fact. From chapter 2 to 68, there are 29 coded chapters and 38 codeless chapters. Surprisingly, each of the 4 groups starts and finishes with a coded chapter, despite the lower probability of success. So the probability of success is over here for the coded chapters. And over here you can see that the probability of success is more for the codeless chapters than the coded chapters. So if you have them in this jar and you want to pull one out, the likelihood is that you're going to pull one out of the 38 codeless chapters. But over here, we see that the first chapter of the G1 is a coded chapter. The last one of the G1 chapter is a coded chapter. The same is true for G2, G3, and G4. This event does not appear to be by chance. Probability. It is highly unlikely that this arrangement happened by random chance, and most likely is by design. Once again, surprisingly, the first 3 groups also begin with 2 coded chapters and conclude with a set of 6 or 7 consecutively coded chapters arranged in nearly identical sequences. We have 2 consecutive chapters here that are coded, 2 consecutive chapters here that are coded, and 2 chapters that are coded here, and there is a gap between them. Then we have 7 consecutively coded chapters here, a very high intensity. And over here we have 7 consecutively coded chapters, again high intensity. And over here we have 2 consecutive chapters that are coded. So between these two, the only difference is that the first 2 here are consecutive and the first 2 here are not. There is a gap of 1 between them, but still there are 2 of them. And when we compare G2 with G1, we can see that both of them, in both of them, the first 2 chapters are coded and they are consecutive. But G2 is completed with 7 consecutively coded chapters, G1 with 6 consecutively coded chapters. The only difference is here 1 variation. So they are almost identical. With high density that goes against their probability of success. Probability. Given the decreasing probability of success of the coded chapters, it is nearly impossible to randomly select 3 consecutive, almost identical sequences for the first group, the second group, and the third group. This distribution is nearly certainly by design. Numerical facts. All of the 29 coded chapters are contained within the 4 groups, with none existing between the groups. So we see very high intensity of coded chapters in group 1, group 2, and group 3. And all of the 29 are used. 9 coded here, 9 coded here, 9 coded here, that's 27 codes, and 2 coded chapters here, that makes it 29 codes. All of them are inside these codes, but there is not a single one of them between these groups. How could that happen? So the coded chapters inside the 4 groups are 9 plus 9 plus 9 plus 2, 29 complete. Surprisingly, again here, we see that the codeless chapters inside the 4 groups are also 29. 5 plus 5 plus 2 plus 17 is equal to 29. Probability. Given the objective probability, having an equal number of coded and codeless chapters within the four groups, and no coded chapters between the groups is nearly certainly by design as well. At this time, all the 29 coded chapters and 29 of the codeless chapters have been used in the groups. And only 9 codeless chapters are left. And we know they are going to be between the groups. And how? What type of order? Is there any order? The remaining 9 codeless chapters, divided into 3 groups of 3 consecutive codeless chapters, elegantly connect and unify the 4 groups, displaying a finely tuned mathematical structure. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In this chapter, we demonstrated that the 29 codes are not distributed at random, that the 4 groups of G1, G2, G3, and G4 are consistent with the Quran, and that this mathematical structure is objective and verifiable. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Chapter 2, The Logic of the 23rd Code. In this chapter, we demonstrate how the letters, words, verses, chapters, and the 29 codes of the Quran are elegantly and intricately interconnected. Despite the fact that 28 of the 29 mysterious codes of the Quran are in the first verse of the respective chapters, the 23rd code is in the first 2 verses of its respective chapters, a sign of exceptional distinction, privilege, and value. It's the only code that is in 2 consecutive verses of the Quran. Every other code is in 1 or part of 1. And here is the 23rd code. There are 2 letters in the first verse and 3 letters in the second verse. In the first chapter, we proved that the 29 codes are not randomly distributed. The 4 groups of G1, G2, G3, and G4 are consistent with the Quran, and that this mathematical structure is objective and verifiable. Here we have highlighted the 23rd code. It's in G group 3, and there are 4 coded chapters before that, which are chapter 38, 36, 40, and 41, And there are 4 coded chapters after that, which is chapters 43, 44, 45, 46. So the 23rd code is the midpoint of the G3. The 23rd code is at the beginning of chapter 42, the halfway point, midpoint between G3's 9 coded chapters. So here is a larger picture of it. G3. There are 9 coded chapters, and the 23rd code is the midpoint. Here are 2 mathematical structures, one of which is a component of the other. Here is the main mathematical structure here. The 23rd code is in chapter 42, which is the midpoint here. And has 53 verses. So 42 has the 23rd code and has 53 verses. But here we have another midpoint in G2, which is chapter 28. And chapter 28 has 88 verses, and its code is the 14th code. And then here we have another midpoint, which is chapter 11. And chapter 11 has the 5th code and has 123 verses. So there are 3 midpoints here that are a component of the larger structure. So 2 structures, but they are deeply connected. The creator of numerals. Surprisingly, with the 53 verses of chapter 42, we can use simple equations to calculate the exact number of verses in chapters 11 and 28 and the gaps between the codes indexes. So we can do that. Calculate the number of verses, but also calculate the codes. "53" is the reverse of 35. That's clear. Interestingly, in hexadecimal, 53 is 35. Interesting. Not related to this part of work, but something really interesting. Now 53 is the reverse of 35, and that's all we need. Here. You add 35 and 53 together, and you get the number of verses of chapter 28. And here we have them, and this is what we did in previous page. We added 35 to 53. We have we had 88 verses for chapter 28, and now we add another 35 to 88, and we get the number of verses of chapter 11. Beautiful. It's like a miracle. And the reason is basically that there are exactly 35 verses from 53 to 88 and 35 verses from 88 to 123. Beautiful. The midpoint of the three midpoints. Now here we have the three midpoints in 11, 28, and 42. Now when we add 123 and 88 and 53, what we have is 88 plus 88 plus 88. The three midpoints of the larger structure have their own midpoint, which is chapter 28. The code indexes follow an order that is similar to that of the chapter numbers. If you add 9 to 5, you get 14. And 14 is the code in chapter 28, the 14th code. Now you add another 9 and you get 23. Now you have the 23rd code. Beautiful. Now the logic of the 23rd code is step 1. Equations that are directly related to the 23rd code. Now here, that's where we began, right over here. And it was from here that we went through a number of steps. Now, equations that are here directly relate to the 23rd code and the chapter number here. So for that reason, all we have to do is to add these code indexes, which are 5, 5th code, 14th code, and the 23rd code. And now we have 42, which is the number of the chapter number of the 23rd code. This explains why the 23rd code appears in chapter 42. The logic of the 23rd code is step 2. So we did complete the top 2 rows here, and now we're looking at the chapter numbers. And when we add the chapter numbers 11, 28, and 42 is 81, but we don't see any number like that up there. What is 81? '81 is the numerical value of the 23rd code. Yeah. The logic of the 23rd codes is step 3. The standard order of Arabic letters. Here we have used the standard order of the Arabic letters to calculate the numerical value of the two letters that we have here, Ham, Mim, and those numbers are 6 and 24, and the three letters that are here, Ain, Sin, Qaf, that are 18, 12, and 21. Now, we also have two letters here in the first verse and three letters in the second verse. 2 is the first digit in that way, and 3 is the second, emphasizing the significance of 23. I apologize. In the Quran and in the history of the Quran. And this is a topic that inshallah we reflect on in coming discussions, how significant number 23 is. And the number also matches the 23rd code itself. And here when we compare, we see that the numerical values are 6, 24, 18, 12, 21. That equals to, when you add chapter 11, 28, and 42 together, which is equal to be 81. For Quranic calculations, the standard order of Arabic letters works well. In the following chapter, there is an example that supports this statement. Given the objective probability, these two finely tuned and related mathematical structures are not random, and certainly by design. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, chapter 3, the big picture. In chapter 1, we proved that the 29 codes are not randomly distributed. The four groups of G1, G2, G3, and G4 are consistent with the Quran. And the mathematical structure is objective and verifiable. In chapter 2, we prove the correlation between the 5th, 14th, and 23rd codes, their respective chapters, and the larger mathematical structure of the 29 codes. In this chapter, we begin with a fact. 1. The 67 chapters of Muqatta'at structure have a total of 5,316 verses. Fact 2. The Quran includes an additional set of 67 chapters with a total of 1,653 verses that complement the mathematical structure of the 29 codes, which contain 5,316 verses. And this complementary group is from chapter 48 through chapter 114. Fact 3. The probability of randomly selecting numbers 1,653 and 5,316 is 1 in a million. If you have all the 4-digit numbers in the jar, including these two, that's 1 in a million chance that you can pull these two out. Even less than that. Fact 4. The probability of randomly selecting these two numbers is 1 in a million. But the objective probability is 0 when you consider the likelihood that these numbers will result in two groups of exactly 67 chapters that fit together perfectly to complete the Quran from chapter 2 through chapter 114. And many other factors make it impossible for this to be random. The two complementary groups of 67 chapters overlap and share the fourth group, codes of Qaf in chapter 50 and Noon in chapter 68. This is one of the primary reasons of why the fourth group structure is distinct. The first three groups were almost identical, but the fourth group is completely different. Now, in this structure, from chapter 2 to 114, there are 113 chapters with a total of 6,229 verses. And the other 7 verses are in chapter 1, Surah Al-Fatiha. This mathematical framework distinguishes between the Surah Al-Fatiha and the remaining 114 chapters and is in full agreement with the verse 87 of chapter 15 of the Quran. We have given you the 7 most recited verses and the great Quran. This mathematical structure is the self-evident mathematical proof that verse 87 of chapter 15 is about Surah Al-Fatiha. Now the overlapping section has 29 chapters, while the first and third sections both have 46 chapters, emphasizing the significance of the number 46, but also number 23, because 46 is 2 times 23, and we already were reflecting on number 23 in the previous chapter. So we have here 46 chapters, 46 chapters, but here we have 21 chapters. These are emphasizing significance of number 46 and 23. Actually, all of the three sections emphasize the significance of number 46, as well as demonstrating the validity and reliability of the standard ordering of Arabic letters for calculations, because all we did here was to use those standard letters. Qaf is 21 and Nun is 25, and that gives us number 46 that matches perfectly with the other two sections. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, a very beautiful verse. And those who strive for us, we will surely guide them to our ways. And indeed, Allah is with the doers of good. Chapter 29, verse 69. God bless you all, and us. Thank you.